speak to us about, the title of the presentation is From Know-It-All to Learn-It-All, Rebuilding Cognitive Capital in the Age of AI. Here's the description he provided: as researchers and academics tracking the bleeding edge of AI anticipate a coming transition, what some are calling a pedagogical singularity, higher education faces a choice: cling to the know-it-all posture of institutions defending their expertise, or embrace the learn-it-all posture and an abundance mindset. Drawing on the Learn-It-All Educator, this session introduces practical frameworks for using AI to build rather than weaken student and faculty thinking capacity. That also proposes ways to invest and protect cognitive capital and to design learning for post-singularity institutions through cognitive sustainability. And participants will leave with concrete strategies for identifying, protecting, and diversifying cognitive capital in their own courses and departments. Dr. Mahayevsky has a book that's going to come out very soon, and he will talk about it. One housekeeping item is that I will be monitoring the chat for questions or comments. If anybody at any point would like to participate in the discussion, just post your question in the chat or raise your hand. I will be constantly monitoring both, and I will relay the question. I will let you either unmute yourself or I will read the question myself, and Dr. Mahayevsky will address your points as we go along, although the format is in its design is so that the discussion or the presentation lasts about 40 to 45 minutes, although could be negotiated, and that'll be followed by a proper Q&A. But I'm taking up too much time already. It's 2:03. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Simon Mahayevsky of UIC.
Thank you so much, Przemek, and it's a pleasure to be here in this community. And I just want to say right away that, of course, this topic of the new technology is very, very difficult sometimes to discuss. So I just want to create some safe space here that if you do have strong opinions about AI, please feel free to share them. And we are going to be respectful of really the many ideas that we have not yet explored. So, right from the get-go, I want to acknowledge that this particular session does not address the energy use of new technologies or the copyright difficulties that we are just beginning to understand, and really the impact on higher education, where we, of course, respect and we appreciate the academic freedom, which means that faculty have to have the right to say no to certain technology activities within their class. So what we will focus on is kind of an open-minded conversation about how we can make the questions more difficult instead of answers easier for students. And I wanted to ask everyone, if you could please post in the chat where you're from. I think that's going to be a nice first step to more of an interactive style of our conversation. We appreciate Abby earlier on shared. She was from Monroe Community College in New York, University of Michigan. Excellent. I was just watching a presentation at InstructureCon by University of Michigan. Really some great work being done there with AI. And Rush University. Oh, there was a very early AI literacy module that was shared by Rush. That was a wonderful project that we took advantage of. So I will share some links in the chat overall. I wanted to start with this link to an interactive journey through this material, because some of you might kind of only think when you can do things with your hands. And so if that's you, you can kind of explore this resource, or you can leave it for later, but it's more of an interactive way of learning and exploring. So this particular presentation is going to touch on the mindset, but then also on a decision that organizations have to make about how the transition is going to look like. What does it mean to be a post kind of AI, post digital institution of higher learning. So I want to open with some of a historical reflection, and this reflection is about GPS. Um, GPS is one of the first AI systems, so that was machine learning primarily, but the first AI system that was quite successful across the world. And as we were first buying individual devices, and then later by default, the GPS was installed in cars. Uh, we seem to have navigated away from paper maps. And some people might think this was good or bad. Uh, Give it a little thought whether the GPS systems that we have today, whether they actually have a net positive, or is it just big tech kind of pushing things on us? And the more I think about the GPS, I would say that there are a few things that we've gained and a few things that we've lost. I'm going to start with the ones that I think we've lost, but if you believe we lost more than that, please put it in the chat as well. Uh, so, of course, the mental map of a place. I remember back in the 90s when I drove a car in Poland in my hometown. I knew exactly where I was going most of the time. And I had like a 3D version of the city. It was about 200,000 person city, so not a small town. And I think that GPS does kind of skipped some of that mental struggle, some of that friction that produces those skills. The sense of direction, spatial reasoning, perhaps even opportunity to practice it. But what have we gained? So I get lost fewer times now, and I appreciate that. Being lost in a town that's familiar is one thing, but if you go somewhere where it's totally unfamiliar, it can be scary, and in fact, it can be dangerous. So there were positive things that came out of the GPS system that made the travel safer. But there's yet another one, maybe a little bit deeper. When you are navigating from place to place with GPS, what are you thinking about? Like where does your mind go? Or do you have time for your mind to wander and think about things? I think that that's a big gain that we have not having to worry about when you'll get there. The calculation is there for you, estimated time of arrival. Perhaps the next turns, but then also kind of a long term. So the mind goes to a spot of ease so that you can think about new things. So overall, again, feel free to put something in the chat about it. But overall, I think that this was an interesting lesson about some things that we let go, but some benefits that really did occur. So if you think about that, one piece and a skill that but also students have to learn and have to learn quickly is cognitive triage. With GPS, we did not have that because we did not have to make a decision. Do I take a paper map for this appointment or do I take GPS? Well, pretty much the phones kind of solved the fact that unless the cellular networks go down and the satellites fall off the sky, we pretty much did not have to make the decision of what navigation to use. But it so happens that when it comes to the generative AI systems, we have to evaluate and then quickly make a decision on whether to utilize the new technology or not. Now, there's a variety of examples that we could give here, but the one way to think about it is that certain tasks are going to take a set amount of time, and the more time you put into them, there's not going to be much benefit. Whereas there are other tasks where they might be high risk, which means they might fail, but if they do pay off, there might be a really, really big payoff. And so think about harvesting where you already see the crop and you can harvest only what you have there. But then when you put seeds in, there's a bit of an unknown and actually a lot of responsibility to make sure that it grows well to the point of harvesting. So those tasks are somewhat different. And what we're saying here is that this cognitive triage, and for each discipline, it'll be somewhat different, might be one of the challenges that faculty will have to take on. And we see this triage concept to be successfully carried out across many human activities. ER at the hospital, right? UIC happens to be one of the biggest medical schools in the country. And if you watch the ER show, there was a lot of UIC graduates. They are actors, but the graduates supposed to be from UIC, and it was in Chicago. So the triage is very important, right? Lives are at stake. You can't just take every person and run all the tests on them, use all the technology. Um, so cognitive triage. Now, another way to look at cognitive triage, and here's where we're suggesting the first framework for faculty to consider and then perhaps share with students is to look at the two types of tasks. One of them, the ones that have the capped payoff. If you're investing in stocks or otherwise, you know that certain stocks, you'll only have 6% interest. There's no way that there's going to be more than that. They're safe investment. And then there are uncapped payoffs. So the capped payoffs, we created a word that's easy to remember. And if you like acronyms, great. If you hate them, sorry about that. But the reason why we create an acronym is so that we can quickly remember it, and maybe students can quickly recall it, because the triage means that there may be emotions involved. Cognitive triage means that you need to be able to remember some things through your fast thinking, not just the slow thinking that, of course, takes so many calories and so forth. So, fluff meaning if the tasks includes formatting, maybe you like doing PowerPoints, or you format your syllabus. You could be formatting for a very, very, very long time, and you always make it better. However, the actual benefit to students might be very, very small between the different versions. I've spent hours looking for just the right header picture for an online course. And so I know that definitely formatting can be a time sink. So if it's formatting, layouts, maybe under the hood tasks, filing, some organizational work, filtering information. Now, this type of a task is going to really depend on the context, because for some students, learning maybe to do HTML coding is something that they've never done before, and it's actually the place where they have to invest time. But for me personally, if I need to create an HTML page, uh, for me it's fluff, because I know the code, I know the results I want. I just want to get there as quickly as possible so I can start working on the higher level concepts. So the other types of thoughts, if it's not fluff or tasks, thoughts or tasks, we have fluff versus spark. And the spark are those ideas worth thinking. It's something that has specific judgment, persuasive argument, authentic voice, rigorous analysis. And for the love of all the acronyms, we came up with keen insight, which was a big stretch, but it works. So is it a fluff or is it a spark? And so for some students, writing essays is definitely a spark piece. So this is where they have to learn to really communicate well via text, organize their thoughts. That's definitely spark. While some emails for us might be fluff. We drafted something and now we would like to have this organized, filtered, spell checked, and so forth. So cognitive triage as a kind of approach to the thinking. Uh, in more detail, basically, we're talking about some specific examples. And at this point, if you would like to entertain the idea, please put in the chat maybe fluff type tasks that you are imagining, or maybe something that you've already delegated to I don't know, an assistant, a teaching assistant, or maybe delegate it to some kind of a wizard. Thank you, Nancy. Scheduling meetings. That is uh, that is a beautiful example of something that can be tedious, take a long time, especially if it's to negotiate with people whose schedules you cannot see. But yes, that would be a nice example of that. So then, if we look more carefully at the Spark ideas, this is where the investment for the uncapped um, ideas is important in that um, it might not work out. It might be something that I'm really interested in. Maybe it's a book that I'm reading, or maybe it's a webinar that we're attending, and it may not, pay off. However, there's a chance that the seed we're putting in and that the time actually is going to have a huge payout. And so, um, some ways to, of course, identify those thoughts would be how much of human effort it takes for someone to present something. So, we're talking a little bit about the new prime value of books or essays written by humans versus essays that are maybe mainly generated, um, or music that's played by humans versus music that or especially in live environments. Uh, so these human authentic activities, they definitely would tilt towards the spark ideas. So something that we do not want to delegate. And again, for each discipline, for the courses that you teach or the research that you do, these will be different. And again, depending on the context, one day for a student learning to write HTML code is a Spark process, Spark task. But then later on, it might be a FLUFF one that can be delegated. So the sequence of it does matter. So the first framework, the FLUFF and the Spark, uh, understanding that today we do have to make these choices, and these choices are important. But the second framework that we wanted to share is uh, the cognitive gym. And the reason for it is that often we talk about the mind being like a muscle. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Um, but also, we understand that AI can handle a lot of tasks. So it can be very powerful in doing work for us. So if you imagine someone in the gym, if you're just watching someone lift weights, it's not of any help to you. Or instead of taking stairs, you take an elevator. There are some benefits in timing, of course, but the muscles are just not being developed. Um, so the um, the proposition here is that there's a way to use AI to make tasks more difficult instead of making the answers easier by progressively adding the load. Well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that let's say that we're talking about writing an essay. You can ask for an opinion or a review from AI as a peer, like a peer review. Then you can up the ante and ask give me the response or review as a college instructor, and maybe as an editor, and maybe someone who just hates the idea altogether. Help me to see it from their perspective. So this approach really shows that finding the zone of proximal development. So, looking back at Vygotsky, 1978, that there is science that really shows that if we can not just go from 0 to, 60 miles an hour in the class, which of course students are different in different places when they enter the course, but if we can make the task just a little bit more difficult for them, then there is an exercise and there is some polishing of whatever skill that they were doing. Now, Nathan, I see your comment there. You say that you have hard time trusting an LLM to do even the fluff tasks. I appreciate it, Nathan. And um, one of the other skills that later on we'll chat about is the skill of verification. Because if you think about academic life, if you do research or if you teach an advanced course, you might have a teaching assistant that's working with you. And this teaching assistant might prepare a review for you or take a stab at some task. And so you will have to verify it, right? So um, we are used to collaborating with other minds, and we're talking about humans collaborating together, but at different perhaps levels of responsibility. And the verification piece is certainly something that we've always had. It's not something brand new. So I agree with you that we should not trust these results, but have a practice and a habit really of verifying it. I'll share with you that this presentation is made with Gamma.app, which is just a great application for creating slides. So to me, that was a little bit of a fluff to at least come up with draft one of the slides. And I, of course, went through and did all kinds of things afterwards. But the draft one, which can be sometimes hard and time consuming, to me, that was something worth delegating. Yes, totally agree with you, Nathan, that sometimes it's easier just to do it right instead of having to verify it later. Um, so, progressive overload. The progressive overload will look differently across domains. I teach computer science, so I can tell you that there is a difference between just writing code and in computer science, writing code often means using snippets of code. It's common for professional programmers to kind of live inside of Google and Stack Overflow, where you copy small parts of code and then make them fit and modify them. So the writing of the code oftentimes is the easy part. And unfortunately, writing the first version of a computer program, it goes really, really fast. Where we tend to slow down is once we try to modify and add new features, we find out that this is not a maintainable type of code. It's not a readable. Oftentimes you can't remember, even though you wrote the code, you can't remember what the code is doing within some lines. So one way to increase the load is to have a chatbot explain to me what this code does. What security concerns are there within this code? So finding ways to make the task more difficult than just accomplishing, say, the writing of the application, that's where much of our pedagogical work will belong as well. It's interesting that when it comes to this cognitive gym, you can actually experience it on your own by doing this special prompt. And this is prompt that was viral for a while. And the prompt says, knowing what you know about me, and I'm assuming that you have an account maybe with Gemini or an account with Claude or some other system. And these systems today tend to look at your previous conversations. You can even enable a memory function. It basically remembers what you said, what it said, and what you're interested in. So if you ask, knowing what you know about me, what are my blind spots? You'll be amazed at the answers. Um, that's the kind of a progressive overloading that we're talking about, that you can actually have a little bit more of benefit than just treating it like a Google search. It's not just for giving answers, but actually to challenge, to be a sparring partner. So now to Nathan's point, we need to be able to verify things. And verification is somewhat difficult because if we're talking to students who never wrote computer code, or maybe students who do not understand the principles of writing, and of course, writing is all about rewriting and being able to organize your thinking as you progress through the topic. You often don't know what you're thinking until you write it down. So there's a whole process. So just draft one, of course, is just the start of the journey. But students might not be able to verify, right, what they're reading. They simply do not have the knowledge to say, oh, you know what, this is not right. So what we're trying to share with them is an audit trail or a skill where a professional who's been within the discipline for some time can spot either it's a hallucination or maybe an answer that basically was maybe the question was misunderstood by the chatbot altogether. Um, but here's a little bit of an idea of an AI audit. So when you have an answer, and maybe this is some kind of a essay that back and forth a student was working with a chatbot on, what are the assumptions? Uh, it is interesting that the moment you start, once you have, let's say you attach that essay and you start asking, what are the assumptions made here? What are the gaps in knowledge? That this can really help to visualize that no text can have everything in it, and no text is without bias. To the extent where Claude or Anthropic published research how they suspect that these machines are now developing functional versions of emotions. Now, what they mean by that is that whenever humans express a thought or write down a thought, there's some emotion behind it, whether it's love or it's anger, whatever it might be. And in order to actually connect the dots, they have to regenerate that functional emotion to come up with the right answer. A very interesting article, by the way, and I am not saying that AI is conscious by any means, but the idea of the assumptions that anything that's written, there's emotion behind it and possibly bias. And as much as we want to talk about these systems being biased, we of course know that humans tend to be biased as well. So verifying the assumptions, and maybe the AI audit is part of the assignment that you have. So not only coming up with whatever the essay or the maybe computer program, whatever it might be, but also now you'll have the 5 additional sections. What are the assumptions within this particular work? What are the sources? And the systems have gotten better and better at citing all kinds of sources. But the citing of the sources often means that the system doesn't, you don't ask a question and it just has an answer, but actually the AI systems, the LLMs, they argue with each other. So more and more of the more advanced programs. So let me just say that the LLM, large language models, are like engines in a car. But then the rest of the car, whether it's a radio, doors, or brakes, whatever else, that's actually added in addition. So that's why there's such a big difference between, say, Claude by Anthropic, between ChatGPT or Gemini, and it makes a huge difference. And within that system, not just the LLM, but the system, um, they often use the LLMs back and forth. It's not just one LLM responding, which is why we saw hallucinations being decreased quite a bit, not zero, but decreased quite a bit, because the LLMs again are going to even show you how they're thinking. You can in some of the systems you can actually track what they were arguing about or what they were suspicious of and what they checked later. But of course, the sources, very important to always verify. What's the counter evidence? Again, not that the essay is wrong or maybe historical research, whatever it is, but what's the counter evidence? Because there's always counter evidence to any expression and any finding. Then auditing the actual rule-based logic. So simple mathematical expressions sometimes are wrong within the AI outputs. The very, very famous spelling of strawberry, right? The systems were unable to count the vowels correctly. And then under point 5, today, actually, a student who works alone on their essay, and let's say that they're trying to verify facts or they're trying to verify citations, they can use multiple not just LLMs, but multiple chatbots. And these chatbots are kind of like children. They're raised differently. They have different biases. And so if you wrote something with Claude, use Gemini to, you can just say fact checked. Or you can use Perplexity and then try to verify. Um, you can go from the start with the audit. What are the assumptions? What are the sources? What's the counter evidence? So going cross-model is actually a very important skill. It's sometimes we call it the mixture of experts. You actually will learn that these LLMs are not all the same, and that they are able to be helpful to you to show the errors in thinking or to show you new paths. And so this audit process that a student would perform uh, definitely covers some of the key competencies that we're very much interested in, critical thinking, of course, being probably the most important one. Now, the OER that we've shared, the Learn-It-All Educator, um, it proposes that there needs to be a little bit of a mind change for us as instructors to adopt new technology, not just AI, but new technology in general. And what we're proposing here is to really adopt this idea of curiosity. And curiosity really has as an assumption that we have some professional humility. Now, Walt Whitman did not say that. Be curious, not judgmental. Ted Lasso did. So we don't know exactly, perhaps, who is the source of the quote. But be curious, not judgmental, I think is a very good point for academics today, because if you do research, you'll find that either in biomedicine or other advanced fields, in the commercial world, the AI systems are used quite heavily. So then, if you do research for the university, right, to what degree would that also make you more competitive if you were using it? Not for everything, right? We're talking about the spark, the ideas that are worth thinking, but at least maybe some of the fluff, or just give you feedback, the verification, right? So those are all interesting. And to think that you would be criticized by an AI chatbot, well, that takes a little bit of human processing to allow it to move forward with it. And that's the mindset that I think that we'll have to continue to teach to students, but also to continue to renew within ourselves. The Learn-It-All has been attributed to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who, at the time when he took over Microsoft, the trajectory of the company was actually somewhat going down. There were some great products, Windows, Office that they had, but it seemed that people really felt like they knew what the users wanted, what they needed, and how to make money on it. And so he introduced this idea of being a learn-it-all instead of a know-it-all. And for that software company, it was a big transition. I encourage you to read some stories about that. Uh, for us as educators, I think this particular graph here that shows the difference between curiosity and judgment, and then abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. It's a good area to evaluate. So scarcity mindset is when we look at, say, job market and we say, well, if AI takes over these jobs, then like in a pizza, there's just fewer pieces for us. And scarcity mindset can be quite natural to human beings. However, the abundance mindset would say this is such a transformational technology that it might take some jobs away, but it actually could produce a lot more. I think Jevons paradox about jobs and how making some things less expensive actually makes the usage and requires more and more professionals within that particular discipline more needed. I think these are historical examples that show that that abundance mindset could be useful to humans, if anything else, is to avoid the frustration and to help immediately the new generation. So if we think about progressing from horses to cars, certainly this was a huge change. And humans tend to, take it upon themselves to, protest and use political power and so forth to maybe resist a change. Um, and if you're an academic that already has a retirement plan in the works, then that might be just fine. I mean, we do need to be able to do what we feel is right. But the students who are just entering maybe the university and then later the job market, they're a little bit in a different place. I heard one academic say at one point that we should tell students not to use Amazon.com for shopping because Amazon sponsors all these AI projects. And again, in terms of this being a protest, makes good sense. However, the impact of it, or the students' posture here may not do all the work that actually the student needs. All right, so the learn it all versus the know it all. It's more of a mindset that would be very useful in all the other areas where human nature really gets in the way. So if you think about personal relationships, maybe relationships with the friends you have, or if you are married, maybe your spouse, or maybe if you have children, maybe with your children. So just being curious first, right? And then try to learn as much as you can from a non-judgmental place. Those are certainly skills that would help us to overcome a lot of the mental health difficulties. Um, the stigma that's over mental health is a good example, how being judgmental is much more easy for humans than actually be curious. So this is where we get to the concept of what this technology, if it continues on this trajectory and looking at the commercial world, how it affects research today and how it affects actors and art and so forth. It is transformational. Uh, what does transformation here mean for educational institutions? And I wanted to use the word singularity because it's such a sci-fi expression and such a great way to create a bit of a dramatic flair. And so in 1993, the concept was published that singularity is really when the computer systems can start training each other, and therefore they become intellectually more productive and perhaps more efficient, basically smarter than human beings. Whether we are already there, I'm not sure. What I would say that the AI today that you buy, that's free, for example, is not at all like the AI that you pay on the Pro license. I sometimes mention that the AI that's free, it's like a TV commercial, and then the Pro account is more like an Oscar-nominated movie, right? Same screen, somewhat different output. However, note that the Pro license that costs $20 today is actually on the low end. Today, you can pay $100 a month, $200 a month, and more for a consumer level account. What that shows is that the truly new and cutting edge AI systems have gotten so expensive today that most students and academics simply don't have access to it. And then if you look at cutting edge research AI, there was a paper in 25 toward co-scientists. It was published by Google Labs, where they created teams of LLMs that were again arguing with each other, but they actually were able to identify a drug that was already FDA approved, so off-the-shelf drug, and repurpose it towards cancer treatment. It takes about $10 billion to bring a drug from concept through trials into the marketplace. So some results of these cutting edge systems that are not available to most academics really shows that perhaps our experience with AI is such that the truly advanced and expensive things have already gone their own way. And then we are interacting with things that are somewhat on purpose, commercially defined as a little bit dumber. Uh, and maybe as academics, and educators, maybe our role in the future will be to teach students how to use the lower level AI systems and yet accomplish great things with them, right? So there's a academic challenge. Uh, all that I'm saying because if you were to ask whether these systems today are already smarter than human beings, I would say I don't know. And then I would ask, well, which human being do you actually mean? So the campus version sometimes is adopted as okay, so what if the AI system is actually teaching better than an actual human being? Maybe that's the singularity. So what I am proposing is that the actual singularity for education is the configuration of the human, so both the instructor, the student, then the LLM, whatever, however smart it might be, but then also the infrastructure at the organization. And I think why this is important is because just like with GPS, at some point we just weren't asking questions, do I have a paper map or not? But it's the default that if you travel, you're going to use Google Maps or Apple Maps, whatever it might be. And some organizations and some courses are making that switch where basically they're saying, I know you'll be using AI, and by the way, this co-thinking or technology-mediated cognition, that's something that we can adopt, and we will move on forward from there. And I am not saying that this is good or bad. Um, I'm just saying that the location of the singularity can be detected if we start asking the simple question, if AI was just turned off by law or some pinch device that's released by the aliens, if it's turned off altogether overnight, how would your course be affected? Would you be able to do assessment? Would you be able to continue teaching? Or maybe what you're teaching actually wouldn't make sense because if you're teaching about AI co-thinking in the professional life. And I'm not saying that reaching that point in course design or in degree design or curriculum or in the organizational use that's good or bad. Again, this is something that a lot more research needs to take place. However, I believe that many courses, instructors are already making their way there. Commercial world for sure is running towards this direction. But once we reach that point, we're going to be on this trajectory of completely new horizon. Uh, I'll give you an example, like electricity, right? We If power goes off at your home or your institution, it'd be hard to teach, right? And maybe even the involvement of electronic textbooks and so forth. So we are tied with electricity. So being completely tied with the technology does not mean that critical thinking will disappear or that everything is going wrong, but it's simply a new reality. And that's the idea of the singularity. And again, the singularity in this instance as a configuration would be reached differently at different speed by different universities, by different courses as well, and possibly by different individuals. So what we are sharing here is that there is a way to use AI to build critical thinking. There's a way to make sure that the sequencing is right. The human effort first, and then tools later. 1986, there was a research published about the calculator and measuring the use of calculator across many grades. The finding was that in the fourth grade, calculator should be taken away. That in the fourth grade, that particular type of math, it actually helped to shape the thinking that was needed and then add the calculator back in, and everything is fine. So the sequencing of which assignments should be done without AI, which ones can be done with AI, that's something for us to really find out. And so this is again where we are proposing that there might be a benefit to thinking about our classes, to collaborate across faculty on professional development, having maybe kind of circles for common reading, where those conversations can be very useful, because at the end of the day, I do believe that AI is going to make, and it does make, good teaching essential. That while it is a technology and it makes many things very, very different, that good teaching is essential. Well, with that, if there are any questions, we would love to entertain some of those. Earlier, I showed the link for, or I shared the link for the interactive exploration. I'll share it again in case someone joined a little bit later. But this helps to explore the content. Um, and then I also put my link to on LinkedIn, where I also share some documents. In fact, there's a let me just see here. There's another area where we collaborate on this content, and that's on this Substack. In fact, you'll find there an article about the GPS concept. Yeah, so any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or if you want to go on the mic, we might also entertain those. As you're thinking about any questions that you might want to engage on, um, thank you, Michelle. I will also perhaps share a historical path that already uh, underwent the AI singularity process, and that's chess. So chess as a way of thinking, obviously it's a game, but it's a very advanced game. Uh, Chess traditionally, historically, has been very, very important. During the Cold War, countries had wars through chess, right? Um, but what's interesting about chess is that in 96 or so, Kasparov lost to Deep Blue, and that's when a lot of people felt that um, chess is done. In fact, many articles were written about it, how there's no reason to play chess anymore because a machine can do it better than humans. But instead, what we saw over time was that more people were learning to play chess, and that the chess game itself became not more difficult, but more advanced. To such a degree that during pandemic, there was a Netflix show, The Queen's Gambit. Of course, chess was viral at the time, of course, being locked up somewhere, and then playing chess probably had something to do with it. But overall, systems like chess.com, they really report increase of people who want to play, people who continue to learn. And the AI, the trick there was that in order to learn to play chess, no longer did you have to have a human being who was going to show you how to do it. I was showing my kids how to play chess, and knowing what I knew, I was losing to them on purpose. Now my son hates that, and he couldn't understand why. But then when there was a video game where he found it, and then I was winning it, he didn't want to play it with me, right? So there's a trick to learning, finding that zone of proximal development, and what the AI bots that chess.com is using, what the AI bots allowed new players to experience is the joy of playing chess. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to win every time, but it means that you start with a player at your level, maybe just learning moves. And you know, you win some, you lose some, and then as the bot understands a little bit better your progress, it gets more and more difficult and actually becomes more fun. And so the addition of AI technology to chess as an industry was a huge win. And today, they continue to have in-person events, and these players play some really, really strong chess. Um, and it's just a good example, again, historical in a way, where AI did not destroy an industry, but in fact, it's a cognitive industry, and it enhanced it. It actually made it more popular, and that's by finding joy, or more players being able to find joy. And so that's what I wish for your classes, that you help students to find joy in whatever you're teaching, whether it's English or computer science or art. If we can help students find joy in it, that's exactly why we got into education. All right. Well, thank you so much, all. Przemek, would you like to close us up?
Yes, thank you, folks. Thank you, Simon, for a very engaging presentation. Thank you, everybody who joined, and I'm so pleased. As I said, it's such a surprise to me to know that so many of you are not affiliated with the U of I. So continue, please, to monitor the EDUCAUSE listserv. I'm told I know that quite a few of you learned of this event from the listserv. We'll continue to post additional presentation. We've got a couple of really interesting things lined up for the fall semester. We will be talking about AI in the future of labor. We will be having a couple of panels on the environmental impacts of AI. Lots of good things are coming your way through University of Illinois' AI Horizon speaker series. If you have any questions whatsoever about that series, uh, I'm going to post my email in the chat right now. Please don't hesitate to write me with any questions. There's the email. The recording of this session will be made available within 2 weeks at the most. We go through every single recording. We embed our logo. We go through the transcripts to make sure that there aren't any errors, misspellings, things of that sort. But thank you for your attention, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you again at the future AI Horizons event sponsored by the CITL Center for Innovation and Teaching and Learning at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. With that, I bid you adieu. Have a good day and a good weekend, everyone. And thank you, Simon. Thank you again for your presentation and for your time and for your talent.
Thank you, Przemek. Appreciate it.